Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Friday reading. I hope everybody had a great week and that you're having a good Friday so far. Let me just share this on my new Twitter page, and hopefully, I'll get some people chiming in. All right. So, as the description of this broadcast states, I am not going to be reading from the difference engine today. I'm going to be reading my own piece off of Substack, which is not live yet. So I'll make it live so that you can read it and share it around once the broadcast is over. And what this is about is the most likely the trending narrative and language that you've been hearing all over your social media feeds and probably the news about the federally protected lands that are going to be siphoned off to special interests. And this was wedged into the big, beautiful bill, into the Trump administration's big, beautiful bill. So that's the introduction to the piece. What I want to do is give everybody an opportunity to say something or it says right here you're on YouTube. Okay, good. I'm glad. Thank you for letting me know that that I can be that I'm heard on YouTube. And please make as many comments as you'd like. I like the interaction. I like the dialogue. A lot of times people who listen to the Friday reading listen to it after the broadcast. Usually the Substack followers get it an hour later. So right now it is currently 1:45. So I'm about 15 minutes behind schedule because I had to set things up in the background that I forgot about. So let's get right to it so that I don't waste any more time because I am kind of on a time crunch here. Great. So this is Friday reading, Theft of the Commons. In January of 2019, Congress introduced legislation to siphon off federally protected lands in the United States. This is the image that JP so graciously created for me. And that's one of the images of I forget which desert it is. JP could probably text it in the chat what it is, but it's one of the lands that is going to be siphoned off. One of the federally protected public lands that will be siphoned off to the private sector. Good afternoon. Today is Friday, June 20th, 2025. No social media feeds have already been clogged with outrage over the latest calamitous legislation wedged in the Trump administration's big, beautiful bill. Your favorite podcasters have already grabbed their in-home studio microphones and are raising absolute hell over the siphoning off of public lands to special interests and private interests alike. Even your news feeds are warning about it, going so far as to announce that this is a bipartisan issue where MAGA, Republicans, and Democrats alike are coming together to express their deep concern over this devaluation and destruction of our precious public lands. The response to this has been overwhelming. There's already petitions being shared all around. There are links being shared far and wide on how to fight this privatization of the commons. There is encouragement to take to the street to save what little of our access to the commons. The response has been fierce and widespread, and no stone has been unturned. Corporations are coming out making bold statements. Actors are taking to Instagram and TikTok and new Twitter to raise awareness, even going so far as to tag members of Congress or even the president himself in their plea to keep these lands from being sold off to the highest bidder. LinkedIn users, especially in the executive class, are encouraging their employees and connections to stand up to this barbaric theft of our revered commons. The problem is they are too late. In January 2019, John D. Dingell Jr. introduced Bill S-47, also known as the Conservation Management and Recreation Act. This bill was sponsored by Arkansas Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski. Bill S-47 calls for the siphoning off of federally protected lands to private and special interests. The key point of the bill was to pass it in secret without any knowledge or input from the public. The hubris of our allegedly elected leadership in Congress knows no bounds. Congress gave itself power it didn't have and was able to circumvent public input by introducing this horrific bill under something called suspension of rules. Suspension of rules is typically used when portions of a public highway or roadway or an easement are to be named after a notable or famous person. By issuing suspension of rules, Congress has unlawfully allowed itself to be the arbiter of secret agreements from other Congress members and the deliverer of legislation codified into law that could negatively impact the citizens without any voter or citizen input. For something as critical as the selling off of federally protected lands, the citizens should have had a vote on it or some sort of buy in 6 years ago, yet it was never mentioned. Outside of Naomi Wolf's desperate plea for transparency of Bill S-47 on her now deleted Facebook live stream of March of 2019, I was the only other user to actually raise awareness of this tragic bill. And you can go to our YouTube channel and you can listen to the 4-minute video I made 6 years ago called Theft of the Commons. Less than 1 week after my short 4-minute video essay was made public, March 3rd of 2019, Congress codified the bill and made it into law on March 12th, 2019, which happened to be 1 year exactly before the March 13th, 2020 national emergency for COVID response was announced or mandated. So, even if the public had been made aware of the passage of this treacherous law in 2019, by the time any momentum around it would have been gained and organizing to raise awareness about it would have finally surfaced, it wouldn't have mattered because the public were conveniently locked down because of COVID. This bill became law on March 12th, 2019, and it is not revocable or reversible in any way. I don't care what your favorite social media influencer says. It's clear and it's in black and white. It is now law. Yet, based on today's orchestrated outrage online and even in the media, you would think this is something brand new. The drumbeat of ginned up emotional dopamine hits clobbering users over the heads would make you think it was something introduced just this morning. The only reason the message about the theft of our federally protected lands is trending today is because the theft has already been made law. It's well underway. Deals are already being brokered. Contracts have already been signed. Development projects and breaking ground is already happening. So it is now safe for users to cue their outrage online. Once again, the manipulation is vast and deep, and in this case, 6 years in the making. It's too bad all that wasted energy was used screaming about no kings or military parades all the way back on June 14th, 6 days ago, because this is the real issue. It's obvious that anyone with a 6-year-old intellect could see that those parades and heavily marketed protest movements were designed to knock the wind out of your sails, while hundreds of millions of acres of your own fucking country was being sold off right out from under you. Millions of acres of private, pristine land that lends a semblance of what is left in our biosphere, untouched and unpoisoned by the noxious content being unleashed in our skies, have been kept from us since 2019. It is the law now, and there's not much that can be done. The only smidgen of hope we might have to keep our protected lands from being stolen from us is if we somehow convince a judge that the means by which Congress passed this barbaric legislation was done unlawfully, unconstitutionally, and outside of due process through the misuse of separation of rules. I'm sorry, of suspension of rules. Again, Congress gave itself power it never had in the first place when it circumvented and outright ignored the public regarding the passage of this law. Surely a judge with a passion for Native American rights and interests, for example, could walk this back since it was so blatantly, fraudulently pushed into law under a secret vote. In case there is any question or room for doubt, the law allowed the selling off of public federally protected lands to be wedged into the big beautiful bill that everyone is so upset about today. Yet as far as I can see, no one is actually mentioning the fact that it is in fact law. I'm not being nihilistic or pessimistic. I'm being realistic. We are not governed by dopamine hits, false language wrapped around false hope, social media links that are falsely being promoted as a way to keep our lands from being sold off to the highest bidder, denialism, bipartisan political leanings, or even, dare I say, public-private partnerships that stand to make a killing off this deal. Despite your tantrums or your refusal to live in reality, we are governed by the rule of law. And when the rule of law is suspended to usher in what can only amount to feudalism in an alleged constitutional republic, we have reached the end of the rope. I know I have reached the end of my rope with the infants who demand coddling in this republic of ours. I talked about Bill S-47 6 years ago. Where were you? My opinion is that Bill S-47 is a long time coming, of course. The goal, since the onset of the Second Industrial Revolution, and most definitely the Third, is to launch us back into feudalism, where the billionaire and trillionaire class will fraudulently convince the government to sell them publicly protected lands so they can have their own lakes and rivers to fish in, their own hundreds of thousands of acres of land on which to go horseback riding, build their stupid castles or whatever, and only the peasant class will tend to their vast acreage and their estates. This is throwing us back into some sort of mockery of feudalism, actually. In this new order of things, those peasants that work these lands and live on these lands at the mercy of their demanding, socially stunted masters will be the lucky ones. The rest of us will be trapped in our homes, addicted to our dopamine-riddled, drug-fueled social media accounts, screaming about the latest fraudulent atrocity we are now the victims of, in our boxes, swaddled in our refusal to accept reality, too afraid to even face it, and convincing ourselves that by talking about it and sharing about it digitally, that we're doing our part and that will somehow make a difference. Grow up. You've lost the commons. You've lost the land for which you once could wander and get lost in. Land that was untouched as far as the eye could see, so that you could find your soul in the greatest gift God ever gave you. And you've lost the very essence of yourself. You gave it away in favor of fear-based thinking and denialism, instead of educating yourself about the law and what it actually means. We allowed ourselves to be the victims of these foolish, fraudulent games, and we are paying dearly. Capitalists and government appointees have no conscience. Since they already have all the money and power, the only thing left is to toy with the rest of us. They're bored out of their minds, and their only delight in the world is for us to entertain them with our social media posts, our comings and goings, and our emotional highs and lows. We are in the year of the snake, after all. I fully expect them to shed whatever false skin or mask they held up all these years to convince us they had our best interest at heart. Now I fully expect them to stay true to their cold nature and hurl us into further tightening immiseration, choking off life and even annihilating existence through deceptive tactics, fraud, game-playing antics, and outright lies. So they're just showing us who they are. And when people show you who they are, why don't you believe them? what exactly is our excuse for allowing this to happen? And that's it. That's the reading. Um, and I don't know what else to say. The uh, the the theft of the commons is was codified into law. Back in 2019, over 6 years ago. Nobody cared. Nobody talked about it. So why does everybody care now? Why are there people going on and on and on about it? And I guess it's because it's already underway. And so social media is the most feckless way of communication and actually making a difference, because nobody can stop this. It's already happened. It's already like stamped into law. There's a law attached to it that was passed in 2019. So and the whole COVID lockdown measures were very convenient to keep people from actually doing anything about it. So theft of the commons, theft of federally protected land, including Native American land, is very real, and it's happening right now. So I guess what this means is, I will talk a little bit about some things that were happening sort of socially, some things that I saw trending before 2018, which I thought was really interesting. I saw a lot of posts back when I had a Facebook account. I saw a lot of posts on social media and on Facebook about people taking 3 months or so, maybe even longer, to hike the Appalachian Trail. I thought, well, that's interesting. Where's this coming from? Why is this happening? I found that really odd. And, there were all these um, pictures and posts and videos about people who were sort of pushing themselves to the limit, and they were experiencing these, you know, wonderful, spiritual awakenings by getting out into the wild and really just getting away from, modernization, and getting away from other people, and getting away from social media, especially in the digital world. So I find it interesting that just before they took all of that away and privatized it, suddenly it was trending really hard. I don't know if you remember, I forget what it was called, but Reese Witherspoon starred in a movie about a woman who wrote a book about her adventures across uh, the desert or something. I forget what it's called, like open wild or open something or other. But I used to follow the woman who wrote the book and who actually did the trail. I used to follow her on social media, Cheryl something or other. So, and then Reese Witherspoon played her in the movie. And then even before that, there was another movie where it was the story of a kid who decided to hike through Alaska or something, and he inevitably died of like starvation, or he ate some bad berries or something. I don't know. I forget, but all of a sudden, now that the commons are gone and everybody's talking about it, all of a sudden these trending movies and trending social media posts are starting to resurface in my memory. It's like, why was that trending so hard? So no longer can drive to a spot, park, and then walk into like, an open space that was federally protected, where you could go in and camp, or lay out under the stars, or go fish in a lake, or you can't do that anymore. The I'm sure that there will be some that will remain, but for the most part, we're talking millions of acres of land that will be privatized and handed over. And this was all done in January of 2019, when it was introduced, and just just about 3 months later, it was passed into law. And the public was made unaware of it. The public were kept from this legislation. They were kept from having a voice and a say in this law, which is unlawful itself. You can't keep the public from commenting on or being a part of um, publicly protected or federally protected lands. Um, so uh, the the question I have for you, which I will leave this very short reading, I will leave it with you, is what else have we been kept from? What other legislation has come that we've already seen take place in our lives and has baffled us to the point of like, how can this even be possible when it's flies in the face of what is legal? It's not legal to do most of what they're doing. So we've already seen some of the worst atrocities of the um illegality of our existence. I would say that, you know, it started with the National Defense Authorization Act in 2012. One of the things that we were protected from was the weaponization of speech against us and to make us believe a thing and cause us to behave a certain way. And that has been uprooted and inverted thanks to the National Defense Authorization Act, in the interest of safety and defense. So, and that happened in 2012. So if you notice, your social media platforms became really sparkly and snazzy and interesting after 2012. Prior to that, they were just, it was a real clunker to try to get onto social media, if you recall. So, and nobody wanted to. So we saw the, different variations of this take place over the years. And I think the most obvious method of living by non-law, because again, Congress didn't have the right to do the thing that they did in the first place. How can you create a law out of something that doesn't exist in the first place? You see, they're just making things up as they go along. And it happened when Congress decided to just give itself all sorts of power to turn the role of the Secretary of Health and Human Services into one of the most powerful individuals in the country. It happened when in 3 months' time, we went from, decades of federally protected land. In 3 months, they just reversed that entirely so that there are no more open spaces for United States citizens to wander in. And all of this was done under an illegal method. So that's why I said you need a judge to undo that and say, well, if due process was suspended during this time, then that means the law itself, which apparently passed on March 12th, 2019, the law itself is not really a law if, in order to get to that point, you had to suspend the law. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not even a paralegal, but even I can have some grasp of the fraud, the deep fraud in this. This is so deeply fraudulent. So you have to accept that, if you go back and listen to, it was either last week or earlier this week, I did an audio analysis of the 2011 movie Melancholia. And basically the story is that there is a giant, enormous planet that that ultimately crashes into Earth and disintegrates Earth. And I think it's a really good metaphor for what we're dealing with right now. And, there's the different aspects of our personality that refuse to acknowledge that demolition or that annihilation. There's the scientists that want to try to, calculate how we can avoid this. And there's no science, there's no formula that can get you out of this twisted, fraudulent mess that we're in, which is ultimately detonating us. There's also the the person that just wants to, party all the time and say, "Oh, it's the end of the world. I may as well just party and get high and I don't want to talk about what's real. I don't want to acknowledge it. I don't want to have, nothing." And then there's the person who's kind of like me, the nihilist that is like, "It's ending, you fucks. I mean, it's ending. It's already ended. And you want to party or you want to try to fix it or you want to bury your head in the sand, just fucking admit it, you know?" Um so that I encourage people to go back and listen to that. I think it's about 45 minutes, that 45-minute analysis of Lars von Trier's Melancholia from 2011. I'll admit, I'm pretty disgusted with the public right now. All of these influencers, from LinkedIn to new Twitter to Facebook to the news cycle, everywhere you look, nobody's talking about the fact that this has already been codified into law. You can yell and scream and shake your fist at the Trump administration all you want about how federally protected lands should not be allowed to be siphoned off or sold to special interests. You can throw the biggest fit in your life and shake the ground and, rattle your social media cages. Just I said cages and not pages. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's already law. They did it in 3 months' time. They reversed one of the most protected, strong, unbreakable laws. They broke it. What's this? Late but here. Hi. Well, I'm actually almost done, so you'll have to go back and listen to the beginning. Listen from the beginning when I start reading my piece. But thank you for showing. So sometimes you just have to accept the fact that there is no, like, it's over. Like, you have to accept that. The and this is all part of everything that so many people, hundreds of thousands of people, that are experiencing on an emotional level, in this country. The demoralization of, after 6 months of being employed, not even getting an email saying thank you for your application. um you know Most of the country right now is unemployed. And that's, you cannot ignore that demoralizing factor. Most people are desperate. They don't have enough money for an emergency. You can't ignore that. That demoralization is part of the end of things. That is a signal that things are ending. Now, things might turn around in the job market. Maybe under the next presidential cycle, we'll get something better. This could be just political, where, all of these corporations are, bound to a party. And so they need to make the current party look bad. And maybe this will all just turn around. But I don't know. I kind of feel like everybody's in on it, you know? Um, when you have strange weather patterns, I live on the Gulf Coast and we had snow in February, right at the time when half of or at more than half of the professional class were getting let go without warning, is when the snowstorm hit us. So I was in a world of upside down, not only after 2.5 years of being gainfully employed, where we now facing unemployment, but I was also looking outside my window and seeing 10 feet of snow. I'm not kidding. Like, it nothing made sense in this world to me for quite a few weeks. And, it was hard. And so I can't imagine what other people are going through right now. They're in deep denial about how their brains are broken. A lot of people in social media have broken brains. They're in this addictive entrapment scenario where the only thing that they can really feel to make them feel better and feel good about the world is the shit that they put on their fucking pages. Get outside and admit to yourself that it's over. and stop using your social media pages or your own denial or your own inability to feel bad. Stop using that as a way to coddle yourself and swaddle yourself. Accept the fact we lost the commons, you know, we lost our right to, really use our own autonomous belief system, whether it's religious or not, to say no to a toxin. We lost our ability to push back against these heavily funded militarized programs that spray the shit in the sky. We don't have the the we don't have anything. They're just toying with us at this point. The capitalists and the oligarchs and the government officials, all these people, and your favorite social media podcaster, they have all the money in the world and all the influence and all the power. They are so drunk with it. And now they're bored. And they want to grab you and rip apart your body and then, fuck you where your arm used to be. Like, that's where we are. Like, that's exactly where we are. And you can try to, put some frosting over it with your eloquent social media posts. And you can try to, talk about your education and what you know and how important you are. But the reality of it is you're fucked. This is it. I think I don't know why, but for some reason, when I woke up this morning and I saw that, LinkedIn and in some cases new Twitter and definitely the media, we're talking about the handover of the federally protected lands in the big, beautiful bill. I was like, yeah. And I talked about this 6 years ago, made a video out of it. It's only 4 minutes long for those who don't have an attention span beyond the lifespan of a gnat, so I made it short and I used all the right, language and images in order to make people aware. And I did it a week before the bill became law because that's when I heard about it. And I did it fast because it felt really important to me. It felt really important. One of the things that identifies you as a free human being or an autonomous person or having, or living in a constitutional republic is your right to wander, your right to get back to the soil, your right to learn and appreciate what God has given us, which is this beautiful earth. And that's just been taken away. Well, it was taken away 6 years ago, but people are just now talking about it now that it's 6 years too late. Who's going to get the land? Who cares? It's not yours. I don't care. I don't care about the details. I haven't, that's not the point. The point is that something that belongs to you was taken from you. So what else belonged to you and has been taken from you under this suspension of rules or in secret? Like, seriously, when are you going to say who the fuck do they think they are that they can continue to do this? I'm guessing everyone has Stockholm syndrome. I'm guessing that's what it is. So that was the broadcast today. I didn't read the difference engine. I read my piece. I will now make it public. Feel free to share it around. And I do appreciate those of you who've joined in the broadcast today. Next week, I'll pick it up with the continuation of The Difference Engine, this book that I've been reading. We took it from our bookshelf. So we'll continue with it. I'm about halfway through it. And then we'll move on to something else. All right. Have a great weekend. And thanks for listening. Bye.
You can help us continue our work by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Book of Hours, or leave us a one-time donation at paypal.me/Book of Hours, or you can use Cash App. Thank you.